to begin.
Simone Inzaghi yesterday in the press conference said, "We are missing the goals of the midfielders." And today, 2 goals from Luis Alberto, 1 from Lulic and 1 from Marusic. Alistair Mackenzie, can we say that the team have listened to the press conference of Simone Inzaghi?
Looks like it, doesn't it? If that was the problem all along, that he just had to ask nicely, then he should have thought of that earlier.
Yeah, I totally agree. I tweeted during the match, "Hey, Luis Enrique, did you see Luis Alberto? If you want to call it for the national team, he played terrific today. Is it the Luis Alberto we saw last year back for you?"
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was the best performance of the season from him. It's the most influential I think he's been, and not only in the goals are obviously great, and you could tell that he was desperate to get hat-trick as well, because right up until the end he was chasing everything down, and he showed real appetite for the game today. But I just thought he was playing a lot of really good passes. He was... Oh, Tuco Correa has just driven past me.
Stop him!
He's just waved out the window. I don't think he was waving at me personally, but anyway, and yeah, so I think it was definitely his best performance of the season, and really encouraging. And I think there's a lot of encouraging stuff to talk about from today, but you're right, he's definitely one of them.
One of? Okay, I think Correa took Alistair Mackenzie with him because he's not replying anymore. Are you back, Alistair?
Yes, sorry. No, just he was definitely one of the most promising things from this game today. I would agree.
Alistair, do you think... I was saying that one of the biggest difference is last year Lazio started really, really strong, really good performance at the beginning of the season, and then at the end, Lazio, maybe the fatigue, I don't know, players tired or injured, they didn't play as well. This year it's looked like completely the opposite, right? Lazio started not very well, and now they're playing well. In the last, since the derby, I would say, the last 2 matches Lazio have been playing really well, really great. Do you agree?
Yeah, there's a real air of confidence about the team, and I think this is, we've spoken about this all season, but I think this is a team that does kind of need that confidence to play at their best. And the other thing that I really liked about it was that the fans seemed to be on board as well. I mean, it was a really, really good atmosphere in the stadium today. Everyone was really positive. Obviously, it's quite hard not to be when you're 4-0 up by half-time, but the reaction to Patrick's mistake was really nice to see, because Patrick's a player who not too long ago was being booed by his own fans, and once he made that mistake, the Curva Nord and the rest of the stadium began to applaud to show their support for him, because they knew that he'd had a good game. They recognised that he was playing well, and people make mistakes. It's rare you see that in a football stadium. But yeah, I think that it's definitely a case of finding form at a good time. The only thing that slightly annoys me, I don't know if you agree with this, is that I now have kind of swung around and think that the international break is coming at a bad time, because obviously we don't know yet what's going to happen in the Milan derby tonight, but if it was up to me to decide, I'd probably prefer to play Inter next week instead of in 2 weeks. I don't know if you agree.
No, absolutely, because there's time for them to maybe solve the Icardi problem. That is one of the biggest problem they have now. And yeah, maybe regroup a little bit. And then the other thing is Lazio's playing so well that you don't want to maybe give another extra week and maybe someone loses form or get distracted, etc. Instead, yeah, if we could play next week, it would be amazing. But you know, these are how things go. It's even true on the other side. Radu finished the match limping, so maybe an extra week will help him to recover.
Yeah, the other thing as well that I wanted to pick up on is a really positive thing that I flagged up on Twitter before the game that the list of players who were one booking away from the suspension was quite long and quite important. I mean, it was Radu, Lulic, Lucas Leiva, Badel, and there's another, I've forgotten someone. But yeah, it was great to get through that game without any of those players picking up a booking, because now we've, like you say, hopefully there will be time for injury niggles to go away and things like that, but we won't have any players suspended, and in a way as well, we're much better off Ciro Immobile being suspended today. We can still get through the game without him.
Yeah, shall we talk about Caicedo? I didn't see him today. I think he had one chance. One chance. Yep.
He started quite brightly, didn't he? I mean, in the first 10-15 minutes, I think that the two chances Lazio created were both Caicedo chances. So I thought he started the game quite well, but then he didn't take a hold of it after that. And like you said earlier, it was the midfield that basically ran the show today. There were a couple of times I thought he was a bit unlucky because he was making some really good runs when Lazio were attacking, running at the Parma defence, but he wasn't really having the ball delivered into his path. So I think he did his job fine. I wouldn't say he was really a disappointment today, but he did. He obviously didn't continue his scoring run, which he'll be disappointed considering how many goals were scored overall.
Yeah, but he doesn't move. You can see that him and Luis Alberto and Correa were moving along and passing the ball fast. I think Caicedo doesn't fit in that. So I think that's the biggest problem with Caicedo. Plus, he was a little bit nervous. Did you see what happened in the second half in the Parma penalty box?
Tell me, I can't think of what you're referring to.
Well, he hit the defender, the Parma defender. Now I don't know how hard it was, but the Sky commentator was sure he would have get a red card.
Yeah, that was a bit of a strange one because I saw that being commented on online, but I hadn't really noticed it at the time. And the replays weren't really coming up on my monitor. So you'll have a better idea of what went on there than I do. Did you think it was a red card?
I'm not sure. He pushes the guy, so, I think a yellow card would have been the right decision, probably. But, yeah, I mean, you're winning 4-0. You shouldn't be doing that. So...
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it might just be a sign of his frustration of like we were saying, that there was a game that was a great chance for him to really make a statement again. I think he would have recognised going into this match that with Immobile suspended and the form he was on, he really needed a big game today to actually make a statement that he should be starting in 2 weeks' time and should be starting all these big games. So there was probably a little bit of frustration from him that it wasn't really working out that way as the game went on, I suppose.
Were you surprised to see him leaving? I mean, he wasn't one of the players with a yellow card. So, yeah, I was thinking, well, maybe take off Lulic or Luis Alberto that, with a yellow card will miss the next match that was really important.
Yeah, well, he took off Lucas Leiva. I thought that was smart because of all the players who were booking away from a suspension. He's the one that we really can't afford to lose. And yeah, Lulic came off as well, didn't he? So, no, I think Inzaghi managed it quite well. I was hoping to see Pedro Neto, and obviously we did. Didn't see an awful lot of him, mind you. I don't think he got involved quite as much as we would have hoped. But Cataldi obviously is back in favour and was given quite a long time. He was brought in quite early on. So yeah, I think the substitutions he made today were well considered.
I think he didn't bring in Badel because as well he's a yellow card close to the suspension. So you take off Lucas Leiva to bring another one who is risking to miss Inter didn't make that much sense. So that's why Cataldi. I think I'm not sure. That's what I'm thinking. That's why he came in instead of Badel. Do you think it makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, also, I think he wants to give Cataldi more game time, but it's just he's obviously up against it in terms of the competition he has for places. So Inzaghi was given a rare opportunity today, where if your team's winning 4-0 at half time, he's not really had many chances to do this, and almost in a risk-free environment, be able to bring on the players he wants to give more time to. And the last time I can really think of was that Novara game in the Coppa Italia, which was the only other game this year where it was tied up so early on. So, in a league game, in a Serie A game against a team like Parma, who are a decent counter-attacking team, who have, don't forget, beaten Inter away this season, got a draw against Juventus away. I think it was Torino or Fiorentina they'd beaten, so they're a decent team, and I thought it was an incredible position to find ourselves in, where they were effectively being dismantled in the same way that Novara were, a Serie C team.
Yeah, we have to say that both Gervinho and Biabianida probably are the most dangerous players of Parma. Was really controlled well from Lazio. I thought Patrick had a terrific match till the mistake, and same thing. Marusic and Lulic on the wingers, they both were perfect today. Which we often said that that's the main issue of Lazio. If they start play well, then this team is pretty good.
Yeah, something I picked up on, I think it was at half time, I can't remember exactly, but I don't know what you make of this, but something we've heard Inzaghi talk about a lot this season is the fact that when people were putting pressure on him to give a 4-3-3 a try or shift to a back four, change his formation, he's always said the same thing, which is that it's not really about the system, it's about the way his players interpret that system. And I thought today was a really good example of that, because nothing really changed in terms of the players he put out on the pitch, but they do seem to have a much better understanding of how to cause problems to the opposition now and maintain a good defensive structure. In my mind, they have finally seemed to have found that interpretation of the Inzaghi 3-5-2. I don't know if you agree. I mean, it's different, obviously, playing Inter, but it was really encouraging today.
Well, I think the biggest difference is now we are playing with Correa, Luis Alberto, Milinkovic-Savic, and often Ciro Immobile or otherwise Caicedo. And as we said in the past, this is the best solution for Lazio because they are very talented and they create a lot of chances. And on the same time, you saw it even today. Luis Alberto and Milinkovic-Savic, they defend really well. Luis Alberto was everywhere today, and even in Lazio half, so he was recovering a lot of balls, etc. So I think like this, Lazio can be really, really dangerous, and this makes the 3-5-2 a very good tactics because you can play all four of them together. And we have to say that the importance of Patrick is that when Lazio is attacking, he pushes on his side. So nearly Lazio is playing with a 2-5-3, something like that, when Lazio is attacking because Patrick is pushing on the right side. And we saw it today often. There were Marusic and Patrick on one side against just one Parma defender. And that was a big advantage for Lazio because they were able to push very well on that side. And we remember in the past how Lazio was struggling on the right side because Marusic wasn't able to dribble past his men.
Yeah, no, I think that right side is looking really good now, and it's something we would have never expected not that long ago, that Patrick and Marusic would be performing the level they have been the last few games. But yeah, I think it was, like you say, that system works, and you've got Lucas Leiva who basically can drop in as a kind of auxiliary defender when either Patrick or Radu pushes forward to overlap like that. And it's quite dangerous. It's a really dangerous weapon to have. There was someone, I think it was Avesto on Twitter, who said to me, because I sent a tweet out saying, who is this man and what's he done with Patrick? And he said that he thought Inzaghi is essentially trying to turn Patrick into another Radu, a right-sided version of Radu, which I thought was quite an interesting point and backs up what you're saying about the fact that he is capable of pushing forward, providing a threat in those advanced areas because of his background as a wing-back, in a way that I suppose Wallace never would, certainly, and that Bastos also isn't quite as capable.
Yeah, I agree. We know that he's very good with the ball. Well, except today when he sent Sprocati to score. Lazio scored 5 goals today. Can we say it? Because Sprocati is still a Lazio player. Anyway, he's very good with his feet. He still didn't score. That's incredible. 50 match today in Serie A. He celebrated and zero goals, even though he had a lot of chances, to be honest. But yeah, he's very good with the ball on his feet. He's not shy to push when he has the space to do it. So he can become very, very useful.
Yeah, and it's like I say, it's almost like a free shot, because it's something we never expected to happen, was for Patrick to play this kind of part, this important role in this team this season. And I think a lot of credit has to go to Inzaghi for that, because we've spoken before about the fact that it's a bit unreasonable to say Inzaghi has to be getting a top 4 when you compare the squad he has to some of the others he's up against. But he is continually finding ways of getting the best out of the players he does have, and Patrick has to be the best example of that this season, I suppose. It's not always been that way. Patrick's had some very bad games this season, but it's an experiment that at the moment at least is, really is working. I suppose the only other thing is Luis Felipe, who we're both fans of. I mean, where do you put him now? I mean, is he, in your mind, I kind of think of it that if you're wanting more of a defensive approach, he's your better option. But against teams like Parma at home, where you really want to push, and Patrick maybe is the better man for the job.
I don't know, because if you remember, Felipe Ramos was pushing as well. Felipe Luis, I don't know how to call him anymore. We saw him often pushing. I think the fact he's not playing today is because what Inzaghi said yesterday. He said that, he didn't said it clearly, but if you could read between the lines, he said that physically he's not 100% yet, and after 2 injuries, one after the other one. So I think he's not 100% fit, and he doesn't want to risk him, especially with Patrick playing like that. But yeah, when he's 100%, I think definitely he can do that job.
Yeah, it's quite funny to think how many options have piled up there now. I mean, there's 4 different players that we're talking about as potential options on the right side of that defence. And there's not an awful lot between all 4 of them, I suppose, and all 4 of them have been given chances, been given periods this season where they've been the number 1 choice, which Patrick's currently having. And I think that's, again, goes to show that Inzaghi is willing to give everyone a chance. And that must be really motivating for a player to know that even if Inzaghi was a bit too trusted of his old players at the start of the season and a bit too resistant to change things, he has, over the course of the season, given everybody an opportunity.
Yeah, and if you're good to take that opportunity, then Inzaghi will make you play more like now with Patrick is exactly what is happening, right? He played well against Fiorentina, big surprise seeing him starting, and he played again against Parma. I think you can say that Parma and Fiorentina are very similar. They have a very speedy attack, so maybe Inzaghi thought it worked against Fiorentina. I'm gonna replicate against Parma. That's very similar on some cases.
Yeah, but I think the other thing which was done really well today which you mentioned briefly, was the fact that Parma are such a counter-attacking threat, and so often this season we've seen Gervinho absolutely running half the pitch and scoring and getting away from defenders. And Radu had his number in that first half, and then he was moved over to the other side, and Patrick had his number, and Gervinho was hardly involved today. I think he had one chance quite late on, when the game was already over. But that's a big threat, that kind of player. Viviani, the same, a lot of pace. But yeah, defensively, I mean, it's easy and probably more relevant to look at this game and praise the attacking elements of Lazio's game. But I thought defensively it was quite an impressive performance as well, and it was a shame not to get the clean sheet, because that's just come about from one individual error, and I don't think we really deserve to concede today. But yeah, you can't be too unhappy about 4-1, can you? It's the joint biggest win of the season.
No, but, as you said, we could have easily won without allowing any goal to Parma. Anyway, Stefan Scarpulla is asking, Patrick, Bastos, Wallace, Ramos, would you sell or keep? And would sell quantity for quality, replacing 3 with 1 very good? Well, I would probably try to sell Wallace if I have to choose. And seeing it, depending on Ramos recovering, you need to have a couple of them, so you can choose to have 3 available there. I don't know, Alistair, what's your thought?
Yeah, I think 3 for 1, maybe not, but 2 for 1 certainly. I do think that the overall level of quality in the squad has to be improved, and especially in that defence. And again, I think at the moment it's been impressive to see Patrick's performances, but we are still talking about a player who at the end of the day is performing above his level, really. Regrettably, I think that's the reality. So it depends where we are. It's if it's the Champions League, then we have to. There's no two ways about it. That defence we've got right now in the big Champions League games would struggle, I think. So to sell, I think you're right. I don't see Wallace as having much of a future now. And then really, for me, it's a toss-up between Patrick and Bastos. Probably Patrick. If I was to say 2 to go out, I would probably say Wallace and Patrick. And yeah, try and reinvest in quality. But the problem is the maths isn't that simple, is it? Because the money you'd make from selling any 2 of those players is never going to be enough to generate the cash to sign a world-class defender in these days, sadly.
No, and you have to remember that Rado is not getting younger, so I don't know how many matches can he play next season. You always have to think about a substitution for Radu next season, so probably you need to get a couple of defenders if you're selling 2 of them. Someone who can play on the left.
Yeah, absolutely, because Acerbi at the moment is essentially the second choice to Radu on the left, because he's the only other natural left-sided defender, but obviously we much prefer to have him in the middle if we could. So yeah, I think, like I say, I think for me it really depends on where we're at the end of the season and what the club wants to aim for, because this whole kind of philosophy of we want to get to the Champions League, but we want to do it in the most economic way possible, it's just not going to work. I don't think,
No.
Given how many improvements and how much money's gone into our rivals for these positions. So, yeah, I think basically he needs to get the checkbook out if he wants this to happen.
Yeah, Shaw McIntosh is making a very interesting point. The game was already out of reach, but the mistake by Patrick was egregious. We need to focus for 90 minutes plus. How should Inzaghi respond to that? Bench him or not? Alistair?
I wouldn't say bench him, though, because I think that like I said, the reaction of the fans said it all for me, really, which was like that they recognised that he'd put in a good performance and he'd just made one mistake. And it could have been more serious than it was. And I agree that you can't really afford to allow those kind of mistakes, but I think with Patrick, he's a player that needs kind of faith put into him. And from, I think, his performances over the last 180 minutes kind of outweigh one error. I think the question is more, like I referred to before, it's more about Inter and the approach that Inzaghi wants to take for that game, because obviously it's at San Siro and it's a match that could wildly change Lazio's aspirations for this season. So I think it depends on the approach he's wanting to take, whether he's wanting to be more cautious or not as well. But for me, for one mistake alone, I wouldn't bench him. I think it sends out the wrong message.
Yeah, I think Inzaghi has to choose the best team he thinks for the match against Inter without thinking to punish Patrick for that mistake. It was a bad mistake, but still, the match was over. And we have to see, Felipe Ramos is going to play with under 21 next week. So hopefully he's going to play, and so we can see the condition he is, and that will be really, really interesting. Right? That would be good to know what level he is.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's good to see him being called up. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he can kind of work his way into that team on a regular basis. I mean, the other thing is that we should probably talk about is the fact that Acerbi wasn't called up for the main squad.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if the reason is, we are calling only youngsters because we are trying to build the new Italia, then what is Izzo doing? He's 28. He's not young. Biraghi as well. And then, there is Chiellini and Bonucci. Okay, you say Chiellini and Bonucci are my starters. They are the key of the defense. Okay, it's fine for me. But then you don't call Izzo. You don't call Biraghi. Acerbi, I said it, in the last 3 weeks, he has been by far the best Italian defender. Him and Romagnoli are probably the best Italian defenders at this point, because you see Chiellini, he's having a little bit of injuries and things like that. Bonucci, he's not the Bonucci we saw 2 years ago, and it's not even close. In the meantime, Acerbi was the only defender to stop Piatek in all the match in the last 4 weeks. The only match where Piontek didn't score is against Lazio in Coppa Italia, and then the week later he stopped Dzeko. You can say Dzeko is not good anymore, but hey, he's the only one who's scoring with Roma. So, I really don't understand how you cannot call Acerbi. On one side, I'm happy because he's playing so much that it's good to have a week of rest. But on the other side, it doesn't make sense at all. And Inzaghi said yesterday in the press conference that Acerbi is not happy about that.
I'm not surprised. I mean, yeah, you've pretty much said it there. But the thing is, like you say, it's a bit of a contradiction, because it's not as simple as Mancini choosing the team of the future. Because like you say, when I first saw the squad and I saw Izzo's name there, I thought, right, well, Torino are on a good run, been defending very well. And yeah, in my mind, he was still a young player. And then I looked him up and I found out he's not a young player.
Not at all.
There's only, I think, 3 or 4 years between him and Acerbi. So in my mind, Acerbi being a 31-year-old, it's not like he's over the hill. For a centre-back, that's the kind of prime of his career. And for Mancini, really what he needs to be thinking about is Euro 2020, because that's his first major tournament. That's in, 18 months' time. It's fair enough to look at a player who right now would be in their mid-30s and say, right, by that stage he might not be useful to me. But there's nothing to suggest that Acerbi's not going to be capable of playing at this level in 18 months' time. So I just find the whole thing a bit strange, because if you're picking on form, he has to go in. And like you say, I think there's just some untouchable players there, Bonucci, Chiellini, who obviously aren't the future, but will be useful for those Euros. But then Acerbi falls into that bracket. So yeah, it's a bit frustrating, to be honest. But like you say, at least it means you won't be getting injured on international duty.
Yeah, Alistair, before we wrap it up, we just touched on Pedro Neto. What's your thought on his performance today?
Well, I don't think he really got an awful lot of a chance to make much of an impact. Didn't really see an awful lot from him today, to be honest. Whenever he's appeared before, there have been moments where he's got the ball out wide and he's really had a run at defences. But today he came on for Caicedo and was playing through the middle, which seems to be the way that Inzaghi thinks he'll be used in this system. And I just don't think it didn't, in my mind, seem to play to his strengths quite so much, having him in that role. I think he's a bit better in the wider channels where he gets a bit more space and it's a bit easier for him to make things happen. So, I mean, again, it's just another substitute appearance, so I think it's quite easy to look at him and read a bit too much into every minute we see from him, but there's definitely a player there.
I think the biggest problem today was he was playing centrally, and he's very similar to Correa and Luis Alberto, so there was a little bit... they were taking off space out of him, so he couldn't do that much. The only time he did something was when he moved on the right side, even though he's left-footed. So I think he can play in a central position, but not with Correa and Luis Alberto playing there as well. That's not very good for him because they take his spaces. So he should be playing on the wing. But Inzaghi decided to play that way, and yeah, he can try. He's young. He can learn to play there, but in a central position. But I don't think he fits with Correa because he's not a striker. We said that Ciro Immobile, Correa, Luis Alberto work very well together, but Pedro Neto is not a striker. He doesn't go deep when the other player has the ball. So I don't think it's working.
Yeah, fair enough. Just one more thing I wanted to touch on because I'm going to have to go quite soon, but I think it's probably worth bringing up the stuff that's been going on with the stadium this week because it's definitely a topic that's interested our listeners in the past.
Yeah, go on.
Well, to just summarise, there's been, I suppose, the Stadio delle Aquile, which we've been talking about for, about 14 years now, has finally come up into the public attention again. And Virginia Raggi, who's the mayor of Rome, went on Radio 6 earlier this week and said that she hasn't had any proposal from Lotito. It hasn't been brought to her. But Diaconale, the spokesman of the club, has said that she's going to get an invitation to Formello for the inauguration of the redevelopment of the training centre, and they'll present the project to her. So, yeah, on the one hand, it's positive to have it being talked about again, but I mean, the other thing that I wrote an article about this week, which is a bit more concerning, is that the rest of the comments sound like they've got completely different ideas of how this is going to go, because Lotito wants to build the Tiberina area of land, which is unoccupied, whereas Raggi has said that by law they need to reconstruct or demolish old sporting facilities to then build a new one. And she's really keen on Lazio taking Stadio Flaminio, which we've been hearing about for years now. But Lazio released a statement in response saying that the Flaminio would be impossible logistically, and that basically it's not a coincidence that in the 9 years since it closed, every attempt to bring it back has failed. So it's quite hard to work out where this is going to go. I don't know, are you thinking it's good news because it's being talked about, or bad news because they're thinking different things?
The thing is, Raggi is pushing for the Stadio Flaminio, who would be amazing, but obviously Lotito wants to do it on the Tiberina because it's his land there, so he would be building the stadium in his property. The other thing is that Raggi said Lazio never presented a plan, and Lotito said no, we presented it, 2005, and she said it's updated, and then Lazio released a press release saying, well, that's the plan we're going to present, basically saying that's the plan they're going to present when Virginia Raggi is going to come. to Formello in 1 month time. And so there's the risk that they're going to present the plan, but it's going to be updated, out of date, and so it won't be approved by the mayor. So that's the biggest risk, I think. So yeah, positive that have been talked to, but not positive the what is going through afterwards. So yeah, big concern still.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'd like the club to soften their stance on the Flaminio idea, because I do understand their misgivings about it. But I think that if they do have the political will of the city, which it sounds like they do, to make that happen, it would be an amazing location to have a stadium, city centre, very close to Piazza del Popolo and Metro line and everything. And obviously it fits in with what she's saying are the regulations of replacing a sporting structure with a new one. So I don't know. I mean, in my mind, I think that they need to be open to negotiate, which isn't something the club are always great at. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. It's definitely good for it to be discussed again, and it's exciting to kind of think about it. But let's not forget it's been 14 years since it was first talked about, and not much has happened in that time. So I think we need big news to happen when they actually sit down to talk about it.
Yeah, we're gonna see what happens. Anyway, it's good they talked about it, but we were hoping better. And yeah, I'm rooting for the Stadio Flaminio. Would be amazing, but it looks very unlikely that this can happen. Alistair, I know you have to dash, so I'll leave you here. And guys, as usual, you can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Spreaker, on iTunes. I apologize for the beginning. I forgot to change the settings, so you missed the beginning of Alistair. I'm sorry, it's my fault. So I apologize. And yeah, we're gonna talk in 2 weeks' time, I think, when Lazio plays again against Inter. A very, very important match. Bye, Alistair. Thank you for your help.
Cheers. See you next time.